Hi BookTube! I'm here today with a wrap-up of the last 8 books I've read. I was going to do it by 5, but I just kept reading and didn't film. So I just thought I'd get these 8 books out of the way. So the first 2 actually, I just returned to the library, so I'll put pictures here. The first one was Knights of Sidonia, and I don't have the author's name off the top of my head. That was an interesting manga. It's about fighting in space and giant robots against these weird creatures that they honestly admit at one point they don't know if they're friendly or if they just don't know how to communicate or if they're trying to communicate but it seems aggressive, but they just go and they kill them anyways. Yeah, I want to continue because the graphics are amazing, but the storyline it starts off with him living with his grandfather underground and then him going off one day and ending up on the surface, I guess. And then it just completely forgets about his grandfather. I'm just like, well, how's he doing down there? Is he doing okay? Is he still alive? What's going on? Yeah, so that was interesting. But the overall art and everything was pretty cool. And it was really, one of the things I really liked about it was that it was easy to distinguish the different characters. Yeah, so that was cool. Then I read Disorientation by Ian Williams. He was born in Trinidad and he's lived in Canada and the United States, and it's his experience with race. And it's a totally different approach than other books that I've read about race before, in that it's very personal, and he's like, listen, you know, just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm an expert. I'm just gonna share, you know, my family and my friends' experiences, and then kind of explain them. And it was really good. It's based on this whole idea, the title, Disorientation, on that, you know, a black person will go about their lives and then they'll get, you know, a microaggression or noticed, even a look from a white person sometimes, and they'll be like, oh right, I'm black. And it's disorienting because you're just going about your day-to-day life, you don't think about it, and then something happens. And he says specifically, you know, when you're young and that happens for the first time, it's very disorienting. Because his niece went through an experience, a racist experience, at a young age, and she was very confused, you know, why all of a sudden did this happen. But he goes on about lots of different other things too, and it was a great book. And he approached it in some humorous ways as well. Like the whole first chapter is about swimming, but it's about much more than swimming. And then when he's talking specifically about disorientation, he starts moving the text around the page, so you have to turn the book sideways, you know, you're getting that effect of disorientation while reading. Yeah, he's one of my favorite authors. Right here, Reproduction is one of my favorite books by him, Ian Williams. Okay. Now onto the books that I actually have here. The Face on the Milk Carton by Carolyn B. Cooney. Apparently there are a lot of books written in the 90s about children being kidnapped and then being raised by their kidnappers, because this is not the book I thought it was, and when I went to go look for the book I was thinking of, like a whole bunch popped up. I still haven't found the one I'm looking for. Yeah, so this is about a girl who notices her face on a milk carton, and becomes really confused because her family is very loving, and you know, she loves them back, and you know, she's like, should I contact these people? Like, I'm their daughter, but I don't want to leave my current family. And it's interesting. It's obviously the first in a book because nothing happens until like the last page, which was a bit frustrating. But yeah, early 90s YA, definitely YA, not middle grade. Yeah, definitely worth checking out, I think. Then I read the second book in the Machineries of Empire series, Raven Stratagem by Yoon Lee. I can't say much about this because it's a sequel. But in the first book, we get introduced to this society that's kind of subdivided into different factions, and they each do something different. So the major factions that we are introduced in here are continued to know more about are the Kel, who have this thing called formation instinct, which means they cannot disobey an order from a superior. And then the Shuos, who are kind of like the bureaucracy. Those are the two major sections we get introduced into here. There's more, but those two are the big ones. And what happens in the first book is that this person comes up with a strategy that involves resurrecting a dead general who committed mass murder against his own people, and using him because he was a brilliant general. And this continues the story with quite a few twists and turns. It's quite interesting learning more about the society. Yeah, the first book was quite disorienting, trying to understand everything, but that book, you know, you finally have a bit of a firmer ground. They're introducing new things, but you kind of understand a bit more. So, yeah. Speaking of confusing books, the Malazan series, again, that's the same thing. It's just kind of both the Machineries of Empire and Malazan. They just kind of like drop you in the middle of the story and just say like, good luck, you're gonna figure it out as things go along, hopefully. But this is book 5, I believe. Book 4, yeah, I think it's book 5. Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. Yeah, this takes place before everything else, like well before everything else. We are introduced to the Lether people and the Tiste Urder proper. We get those races mentioned in the other book, but they're actually the main characters and the main cultures that we're following here. And they're going to go to war. It happens about like right there. The war starts or something. Yeah. And it's interesting getting introduced to these cultures. Lether culture is very much like capitalistic, very based on money. Money is everything. And we have these characters who, he has them in almost every book, and I don't know why I keep falling for it. I should be expecting it, that these characters that seem really kind of naive and, you know, just go with the flow kind of characters, really kind of aloof almost, but entertaining, and they turn out to be a lot more than what they seem. I mean, that happened in this book. There was a bit of a red herring. I don't know if that's a spoiler, because I thought it was one character, but then it did turn out to be another character. I don't know if that makes sense. That's like a trope I really like. Something that seems really naive, but is actually quite powerful in the end. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about this. It's amazing. I love the Malazan series. Yes, it takes me a long time to get through them. It took me a year to get through this. Just because they are so packed with... It's not info dumps. He did info dump at one point. Let me get off track. At page 750, book 5, we finally get an info dump on the magic system. But he doesn't necessarily info dump, so you have to pay so much attention in order to get things. So this is not just like an easy sit back and go with the flow kind of ride. It's kind of like you're lost in a strange city and you don't know what's going on, so you have to pay attention to everything around you. I think that's the best metaphor for this series. And I love it. I love it. Okay, totally different track. Misquoting Jesus by Bart D. Ehrman. The story behind the Bible, the story behind who changed the Bible and why. And this is exactly what it sounds like. He became, as a teenager, a fundamentalist, evangelical Christian, and then he started asking questions like, why the KJV? Why, you know, we got to get back to the original text. But what is the original text? Is there an original text? You know, and then noticing throughout history, you know, that mistakes were made, purposeful changes were made to the text, and he just goes through and explains, you know, how you go about finding that in an academic sense, the history of people who have studied this thing, and then his own observations on this as well. It was quite interesting to read. Definitely glad I reread it. This was a reread. I read this back like 10 years ago. Okay, I also read If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha, and I tagged the heck out of this. It's amazing. Very surface, well, not very surface level. It's about Korean beauty standards. We follow, I believe there's 4 different women. One who has had a lot of plastic surgery, and she works as a room salon, which is, I don't know how to put it. It's like it's almost like prostitution, but it's not explicitly prostitution, but it is kind of under the table encouraged prostitution. Kind of like you go to a bar and you have a private room and you can hire girls to be there and entertain you. So she works there. Then we have another young Korean woman who's trying to get pregnant and have a baby, and we learn all about all about their past. Most of them are orphans. And then there's another girl who's this artist, and I loved her story at the end. And then there's one more. Oh yeah, she lost the ability to speak, and she's amazing. I personally don't agree with her actions, but when stuff happened, I was like, yeah. But also like, oh, you probably shouldn't react that way. But in a fictional sense, the violence I agreed with. I'm not a violent person in real life. I don't agree with violence in real life, but in fiction, I love it. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, it doesn't come to an actual conclusion. It's just kind of like a section of their life, and I love books like that. Yeah, and it's about sexism and beauty standards, and it's also a lot about economic factors in Korea and the divide between the rich and the poor. We do have a really rich character, and these orphan girls, and the girl who had a lot of plastic surgery was in a lot of debt, so that's an interesting aspect of the book as well. Life in Korea, yeah. And the last book, I knew this book would be a new favorite because I don't know why I'm ducking. I don't know if you can see. I'll move the camera. Rise and Reign of the Dinosaurs up there. This is his second book, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, and I hate these covers. They just, as soon as I got it, it was all, doesn't want to stay flat. Anyways, this is by Steve Brusatte, and this kind of, well, it doesn't pick up where that leaves off because there were mammals around at the time, the dinosaurs. But it's all about the evolution of mammals, and it has a lot to do with teeth. That's what my main takeaway about this is, that mammals are like, the evolution of mammals and the categorization of mammals and the finding of mammals is usually done through teeth. It's a lot more complicated than that, obviously, but a lot of it has to do with teeth, which is fascinating. And he only has one chapter on humans. A lot of it is just concentrating on other mammals, and I was just so fascinated and intrigued, and I was trying to talk to my cat about it. I'm like, this is your ancestor! Like, this is the ancestor of cats and stuff. Yeah, I just love learning about this kind of stuff. What is the last tag I have here? Oh, okay, yeah. This, of course it has to end on this note because it is a call to action too, that more than 350 mammals have gone extinct since Homo sapiens started meandering late in the Ice Age. Of these, about 80 have died over the last 500 years. That means roughly 1.5% of all mammal species have been extinguished in the short time humans have been keeping records. It may not sound like a lot, but this rate of extinction is more than 20 times greater than the background rate in pre-human era. If this blazing pace continues, we're on track for about 550 mammal extinctions before 2100. Nearly 10% of mammalian diversity. And if all mammals currently at risk ultimately go extinct, we'll be left with only half the number of species relative to a mere 125,000 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna go right on that favorite shelf there. Like, can you tell me what to do with this cover? I don't know. If you have any tips or tricks, probably just put it under some heavy books, right? Yeah, so that's the last 8 books I've read. Let me know if you've read any of these in the last book that you finished, and thank you for watching.